Akiva.
Hi,
How you
I'm
doing?
good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
I'm just so grateful um, to connect with you again because I know you do a lot of great work in the community, in the world, and so I wanted to bring in like a human rights activist into like one of our episodes, and so thank you
Yeah.
for coming today.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. Mello is the coolest.
You're the coolest.
And you're the coolest. And I'm so excited to be talking with you.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, you're a human rights activist. So, I just want to know more about
Yeah.
like how did you come to be? Like, what's your path like? How did you end up in this path?
Yeah. So I think, as a child, I experienced a lot and I always wanted to change any pain and suffering that I saw around me. And I didn't entirely know how to do that. I started going to protests, and just as like a little baby queer, I was taken in from the older queers at protests. And, I realized that there was a lot that I could actually do as somebody who didn't have a degree. I could do a lot, or I could do something at least that was impactful and actually um, made change happen. And so, I really kind of fell into it from my love of helping people. And yeah.
Wow. Well, and I think for context, Akiva, you're like in your early 20s, am I correct?
I,
Um,
yes,
you're a Gen Z.
I'm a Gen Z.
Yes. I think you're our first Gen Z.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
special.
Pioneer. Um, and yeah, and so basically, I really love your story because, like you said, like your age doesn't matter as much if you
Yeah.
have that heart, that
Yeah.
empathy that you're talking about, that compassion.
Yeah.
But also it doesn't matter as well. Like you have like 0 degrees or like 10 degrees. I
Yeah.
guess it goes back to like the heart um, and compassion that you have for others. So I think that's beautiful.
Thank
Um,
you so much.
yeah, and
Thank you.
a lot of folks out there, they think, oh, I need to have this and I need to have that
Hmm.
um, to be able to make some kind of impact in the world. And you're telling us like that's absolutely not
Yeah. No,
true.
it's definitely not true, and it's definitely not required to go to college. I also think college is a beautiful and amazing thing, and I am not dissing it. And there are really intelligent people like you who graduate
Thanks.
from really remarkable schools. And I don't have that kind of brain. I don't have that ability. And I always thought that that was going to be something that held me down in the area of making an impact. And it's really due to being around some really powerful people who also didn't graduate from college, showing me how intelligent they were and that it wasn't required to go to college. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, intelligence is definitely not the same as education.
This is a great point. This
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
great point.
You can be intelligent, and it doesn't mean that you have like a master's degree or whatever, right?
Yeah. This is so true. This is
So,
so true.
yeah, I think everyone has the capacity to learn and expand
Yeah,
knowledge. And so, whether
absolutely.
you do that like in college or outside of college,
Yeah,
there's just like an opportunity to learn, I think, for everybody.
there
Um,
is. Yeah.
and it's
I
good that
mean,
you found I'm sorry, you
no,
found
go.
communities and community members who, were able to kind of support you,
Yeah.
like telling you about resources and just dropping knowledge about organizing and things like that. So I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, at such a young age, like you've already been invited, for example, as like a guest speaker at some like important nonprofit events.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about? I know you recently went to you're a guest speaker at the Maryland uh, Against Sexual Violence. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was Turnaround, the organization Turnaround, their 45th anniversary gala, raising and funding for raising funds to support victims of sexual violence and human trafficking. It was a real honor to be able to speak there. And, you know, I was able to share one of the poems that I had published in one of their books a year prior. And, you know, just to be able to share amongst congressmen and politicians who are actually really actively on the floor, creating change and creating legislation to help victims of sexual violence, and also to change the laws for how children who were victims of human trafficking are experiencing the judicial system. um, yeah.
Wow.
So
So I hope this is not awkward. But like I was just curious how
you're
you.
never awkward, Mello.
Oh, thanks. Like, how did they find out about you? Like, are you a survivor as well? Is this okay thing to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I am a survivor. And it took me a very long time to claim that title. I experienced a lot of shaming from my family. I was told that I was dramatic, that I was lying, that I overreacted. And I honestly weave in and out of really feeling like those words defined me. But what has grounded me is, again, coming back to the really amazing mentors that I've found within the community who, you know, really bring me back to evidence and the reality of what it means to be a girl who experiences sexual violence. It really usually means, unless you're very lucky, it usually means experiencing gaslighting, shaming, and just kind of being called sensitive. And unfortunately, that really does a number on your brain. So, you know, that is how I found Turnaround. And, you know, I had realized that they were accepting um, applications from artists ranging from poets to visual artists for their annual book, which is called the Purple Poetry Book. And I applied and got in, which I was really, really grateful to be a part of. And then the next year, they had a 15-year anniversary book where they picked artists from the prior 15 years, and I was a part of that. And then from there, I was asked to speak at the gala. Yeah, and it was really amazing to be able to see what I have always wanted to see be put into action and actually be even a tiny little part of it, and just be able to speak and have these really crazy cool people sitting next to me at these tables, and having them come up to me afterwards and feeling like I'm actually like a part of changing something that I am really passionate about changing.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful journey, and I'm sure it was challenging at some point.
For sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine too, like, as a you're a young person now, but as an even younger person going through, you know, without knowing like all the details, like going through what you went through. And you mentioned even family members gaslighting you.
Yeah.
it just made me think about, what do you do when it's kind of like, I think of that as a data or information
Mm,
that's like, but it's like false information being
yeah.
imposed on you, right? And
Yeah.
so if like a bunch of people that you're supposed to trust impose all
Mm,
this false information on you, um,
mm,
at what point do you then like say, no, this is actually false,
yeah.
right? Like when do you make that like verify, like you can't verify it because you're feeling one way, but then
Yeah.
they're telling you the exact opposite. And
Yeah.
so and I feel like this is a way to like verify like the data
Mm,
I'm receiving from my external is very different
right.
from the data I'm feeling within me.
Right.
So I don't know, like I guess you did mention like how were you able to kind of break free from
Mm.
like the gaslighting and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's something that I'm still breaking free from. And I think when it kind of attacks you in your really formative years, um, it really does mess with you for a very long time. And, you know, my mother, I think she had a lot of jealousy towards me, and I lived my life as an extension of her while also being someone she was frequently jealous of and trying to pull attention away from. Um, and I didn't really know any of that to be true. I just always was talked to like I was a burden, like I wasn't enough. I was made fun of. I was poked at family dinners, and experienced what I would identify as psychological torture for many years on end, unfortunately, on top of experiencing the sexual violence from two other male family members. And of course, already being the girl who was made to feel like I was a burden. It was many years before I spoke up and said something about the inappropriate interactions that I had been having with the male family members who were adults. And when I did, my mother told me that she had a feeling that it was going on, but it was nothing like what she had experienced from those same family members. And while that was a really hard answer to be receiving as a child, it did in some ways confirm with me that I wasn't crazy. Even though her response was later followed by a lot of questioning, she comforted me some nights and told me it was okay if I had lied about the whole thing, she would still love me. And I stayed steadfast and said, no, I was not lying. I don't know why you won't believe me. And those are nights that honestly haunt me to this day. The way I really broke free from it was telling myself that this can't be it. If this is it, then life isn't what everyone who has experienced it is. Because it's not good. It's terrible actually. It's hell. And I felt like I was in hell, and I told myself I haven't experienced life yet, so let me make myself experience life. Um, and I went through really, really difficult phases, periods of years, on and off, where I just questioned myself and I thought that I was crazy, and really just being pulled down by the evidence from my childhood that was brought to light by other people. That helped me feel real. But honestly, the biggest part of um, keeping myself alive and actually getting myself to live, and to have a life was leaving my mother, And as soon as I was able to get out from under her, which was when I was 18, I really started seeing what the world was like. And it opened my eyes really to all that she had done to me mentally and psychologically. And I spent 3 years after that trying to escape contact with her, which was very difficult because she kind of had me in a financial bind to her in some ways. Um, but I worked really hard to be able to be financially independent and just cut her off completely, which was very difficult for her because the only way that she had a tie to me was by paying for my medical care. So I cut ties with her much sooner because I realized it was just killing me having to continue to remember everything that she had did to me and being re-traumatized actively in my adulthood after I had left her, um left her household. So it was killing me one way or the other. And I said, I'm either going to die a very painful, slow mental death, or I'm going to figure out how to handle all of my bills on my own. And I took the latter. And that was the best decision I've ever made. And I can't even express to you the freedom that that brought me. And really, I started questioning the way that she was and the abuse I experienced. I started questioning it pretty young because I knew what I felt. I knew it felt bad. And kind of like you said, the data that we receive within ourselves, that was really beautifully put, by the way. Um, you know, you learn to I was unlearned. I was like children, we naturally trust our instincts and our gut, and that was pulled from me. It was unlearned. But there was still, I like to think, those little like voices in my head that were in the back saying this isn't right. You don't deserve this. And I started reading. I read a lot. I read a lot about psychological abuse. And I didn't know that I was reading about psychological abuse at the time. But I read the book that's called Stop Walking on Eggshells. And it's about, being with narcissistic or people with narcissistic tendencies. I also read other books around what it's like to have a mother with narcissism. And it wasn't because I had suspected that my mother had narcissism. It was solely because I was searching for answers and kind of it's kind of like if you go on Google and you're like, does this mean I'm gay? You get kind of like, here are the things that this is happening to me. And then I'm telling her this, and then she is telling me I'm crazy. What does this mean? And then, I started getting recommendations from like friends and people around me, like therapists, on what to read to educate myself. And those two books really were kind of hit the nail on the head. They were pretty much exactly what I had been experiencing. And it made me feel like I wasn't alone. It also gave me names and labels for what was going on. And yeah, yeah, that's kind of how the biggest thing was teaching myself or learning somehow that this wasn't the end, and learning somehow that this wasn't um, my reality. It was the reality that was being placed on me. Um, and obviously, none of this can be attributed all to myself or my own strength. There were many, many guardians that picked me up along the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even know where to start, but I just want to give you virtual hugs.
Thanks.
Uh, yeah, I can't even imagine like what you went through. I mean, there's also like the actual event and everything afterwards, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like a spiral in a way.
It
Like
is.
so it's not just one event and it's done. It just keeps
Yeah.
repeating itself in your head, or it keeps being brought up. In this case,
Yeah.
mother, who sounds like there's some intergenerational
For
trauma
sure.
here,
For
some
sure.
physical abuse,
Yeah.
um, which, you know, this is all really sad.
Yeah.
But I'm really, and I don't mean this to be in a patronizing way. I'm very proud of you for
Thank
like,
you.
um, you know, trying to figure out like what had
Mm.
happened, and
Yeah.
educating yourself like proactively and
Yeah.
reading these books. Again, this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, like intelligence versus education. Like
Yeah.
not all education happens in the classroom, right?
It,
So
yeah, it's true.
books, people do research.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering if you've ever heard of this thing called like the sociological imagination.
No, I have not.
It's like in sociology where it's like you you feel that something is happening,
Mm.
and until you actually hear like other people's stories, then you realize
Yeah.
I wasn't making it up.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's other
exactly.
people. I mean, obviously not 100% identical to like your narrative, but
Right.
like there's a lot of overlap. So it's just kind of like something that's happening in society and the culture.
Yeah.
And so actually this also then makes me wonder because the people that you have mentioned who were part of this abuse who were like family members,
Yeah.
it made me think about, you know, when we think about, oh, traffickers and uh,
Mm.
you know, sexual violence offenders,
Right.
of monsters, right?
Right.
Like this faceless people. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, a lot of times it sounds like it's actually people you're very familiar with,
Yeah.
who are very normal and they live next
Yes.
door.
Yes.
They appear at your family gatherings. And
Yeah.
you know, that actually made me wonder about because you know it's kind of like what should I be on the lookout for these monsters?
Right. Right.
Actually, no, these folks are literally like probably have gone through your own door and you don't
Yeah.
know it. So can
Yeah.
you like uh I don't know like
Yeah.
expand on what I'm talking about if that
No,
makes
I hear you. Yeah, no, I completely hear you. Yeah. I mean, I think like I went through an interesting phase, from I would say teenagehood to early adulthood. Because I would still say I'm kind of in early-ish adulthood. I was like really hyper terrified of the idea of encountering any form of predator or pedophile. And that was kind of my body's reaction to realizing what I had gone through and wanting to protect myself from any possibility of that happening. And then kind of starting to realize that they were everywhere is when I really got out into the world and experienced them like a lot of female presenting people or women do. And it's scary. And oftentimes, people, and this is something I experienced, go through phases of deep fear and hiding and isolation, which is entirely valid. And I think I go in and out of it, but kind of what I've kind of come to is in some ways it's critical to humanize these people. And when I say this, I juggle with the thought still. I think it also depends, and there's so many gray areas. There's so many things. Obviously, the priority is safety and keeping yourself and your loved ones safe. But then also, kind of one of the biggest things that has been really wild for me to realize in my own healing journey is that I feel really terribly sorry for my mother. I feel very sorry for her. And and I also, in a lot of ways, have begun to feel sorry for my sexual abusers within my family. Um, And this is not to say that they deserve compassion. It's also to say that, yes, these people are around us and they are in humanity, and some of them are your neighbors, and some of them are the people that you least expect it. Some of them are your close family. It's one of the reasons I'm so crazy hyper vigilant around when I see children with men. I'm just really, I think that's something that'll never leave me from my experience, is just I'm always zoning in, always worrying about that. Um, but that was a ADHD tangent. um, I think that some of these people, not all of them, could really benefit from help. And, I think one of my childhood therapists, she said to me, at some point in your healing journey, you will wish these people could access help. And that was really confusing for me at the time. And she had expressed to me how she goes and works in prisons with pedophiles and predators and people who've um, committed sexual violence. And that sounded crazy to me. And I wondered why she could have any empathy for people who were monsters. And the reality is, there are some people who are actually just sick. There are quite literally some people who are just sick and they don't have enough resources to get help, or there's too much shame. And so it builds up. This is not me excusing any behavior. I want to make that clear. It's saying that we do need to start realizing that if we want to end violence, we have to omit resources, and or not omit, we have to commit to providing resources. um, and in all areas of violence, we want the violence to end, but we don't know what the next steps are. Or we know what the next steps are, we don't know how to have it happen. And I think, my thought process is always, always, always the children who are near me, the children who I love, or any vulnerable party who is near me, I will always make sure that they have physical distance from somebody who gives me the ick, for somebody who creeps me out. And I am working on putting up those boundaries myself as well. And I will not let my guard down. And um, I think that being fully aware of the fact that these people are around us is important. It's important intel. It's important data for us to take in and think about, and also not always let our guard down so crazy. I think sometimes people go one way or the other. They either are super friendly and will drop their kids off with their neighbors, or they're not interacting with their neighbors at all. And I think there really is a middle ground there. And I think for me, just in my experiences, I will pretty much always be more freaked out around middle aged men and will not let my guard down. And um, yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of like my take on all of that, is that we need to work on the victim side and the aggressor side, in order for this to actually be stopped.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's incredibly, it's a very complex situation.
It is.
Yeah, and especially like each situation is different. Um, and I think it's brave of you to like advocate for like the end of violence, like from multiple levels,
Yeah.
and sides, if you
Yeah.
will. And so yeah, thank you for sharing those.
Thank you.
those insights.
Yeah, thank you.
And like we're gonna wrap up soon, but I
Yeah.
know you have mentioned that you write poetry. Uh,
Yeah.
do any of these themes come up in your writing, or do you
Yeah.
write other stuff?
Yeah. I would say that I write mainly when I'm in pain. And I think, you know, art comes from the deepest of feelings. So the worst pain, the best happiness, the biggest feelings of joy, and the biggest feelings of sorrow. And I've been writing since I was very young. It stemmed from a place of feeling like no one heard me, and actually, probably no one actually hearing me. And it felt like a piece of paper was the only thing that would hear me. And it's kind of developed into this thing that I really, really enjoy. I have written about subjects such as the genocides in Congo, Palestine, Sudan, and the genocide that is in the US. Um, I've written a lot about my experience with sexual violence. It has been one of the biggest things that has altered my brain. And so I think it makes sense, but it's something that causes me the deepest sorrow and the deepest amounts of pain. And so sometimes I can't do anything but write about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Akiva, I hear you,
Thank you.
and I
That's really beautiful.
appreciate. No, I hear you. I appreciate you for sharing all your experiences. I mean, you really pour your heart and soul
Mm,
into our chat today.
thank you.
And like I am so blessed to like
Mm.
have with you.
Oh,
Um, and I'm sure I'm gonna see you around.
I will see you around. I
Yeah,
will see you around. Thank you so much for this opportunity and just the space to really share my story. It means a lot.
yeah, no, thank you. Um,
Thanks.
and yeah, and actually also this is airing during Women's History Month. And
Oh,
Women's History Day is just a few days from today. And so,
wow.
thank you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Well,
That's
you're
really
beautiful
beautiful.
and stay
Oh my
beautiful.
God,
Yeah.
stop. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay. Well, we'll see you again, and
I'll see you again.
yeah, have a great like rest of the year.
Thank you so much. You too. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Mella.
Bye.